We live in the age of infowhelm. And when I say infowhelm, what I'm talking about is that our knowledge base has been becoming digitized at an incredible rate. And it is fundamentally altering the very fabric of our society, the way we communicate, the way we view our fellow citizens, how we learn, what's important to us. The facts become obsolete faster. And because of infowhelm, we live in this age of disposable information where even our newspapers arrive out of date. Now, let me give you an example. In 2003, researchers at the University of California at Berkeley tried to total up the globe's production of digital information. They added up all the ones and zeros that make up the PDFs and the movies and the files and the Skype conferences and everything that goes on. And they added up all those ones and zeros, and their estimate was that we produced 5 exabytes of data. Now, understand that 5 exabytes of data would be the equivalent of 37,000 times the books in the Library of Congress, which is the largest library in the world. Google is financing the digitization of 60 million books, including every book from the world's 5 largest libraries: Stanford, Harvard, University of Michigan, Oxford, and the New York Public Library. You can look up anything, say my partner Ian Jukes, and you get a summary of all the books that he's been involved in. Click on a book and up comes the title page. Click on that, up comes the table of contents. Look for anything you want. Maybe you'll want to find the word exponential. Up will come a list of all of the page numbers that have anything to do with exponential. Click on a page number and up comes the actual text from that book. And you see how quickly things are changing, how quickly we're digitizing information, that in a few years from now, students are going to be able to hold a device in the palm of their hand that will give them access to any single bit of information, any text, any photograph, any video, any painting, any TV program. In short, the entire works of humankind, being accessed in all languages, from all recorded histories, accessible anywhere on the planet, wirelessly, in the fraction of a second. Because that's what all these developments are leading to. And this is what these new technologies are going to allow us to do in the next few years. But this begs some questions, though. What implications do these developments hold for the types of skills and knowledges that people that have the ability to access this will need? What kind of skills will students need to be able to process massive amounts of digital data with little or no effort at their fingertips? How will they be able to determine its authenticity? How will they determine whether it's bias? All of these things are things that are fundamental questions that we have to consider. You know, are schools preparing students for that world? Students today are absolutely as comfortable, if not more comfortable, sending and receiving email and text messages, surfing the web, and reading from a handheld device, a cell phone or a computer screen, as we are reading from a book. Now, unlike us, this generation grew up with a mouse in its hand, along with an assumption that images on the screen are not for passive consumptions, but that a screen is a place to project your identity onto and a place to interact with. And every generation from the time of Socrates has looked at the next generation and said, what is wrong with these kids? But the truth is that today we face a fundamentally different kind of student, one whose experiences, expectations, and assumptions about the world are already beginning to force us to fundamentally rethink teaching, learning, and assessment of that learning. The books and the research are telling us that the evidence is quickly mounting that because of digital bombardment, because of chronic and pervasive exposure to digital technology, exposure that primarily happens outside of schools, that the brains of the digital generation are quickly adapting to accommodate these new technologies that they spend so much time with. Now, further to that, we know that the eyes of the digital generation process and interpret content of photographs 60,000 times faster than they process text. And what we've come to understand is that there are major differences between digital learners' learning styles and learning preferences and the traditional teaching styles and preferences that continue to be used in many schools today. University of Washington researcher John Medina says that people can remember the content of more than 2,500 pictures with at least 90% accuracy 72 hours after exposure, even though the subjects only see these photos for about 10 seconds each. Now, let me repeat that because it's really important. What I just said is that there is a 90% recall rate of 2,500 images, 72 hours after exposure, only seeing them for 10 seconds each. That's remarkable, isn't it? Now, recall rates 1 year later of those 2,500 pictures still hover around 63%. The very same research tells us that if we present orally with no image present or by text, that the component that will be remembered is only about 10%. And that's 72 hours later. 72 hours later, after a lecture, after a presentation, your students are only remembering 10% of the content. And if that's the case, our traditional stand and deliver full frontal lecture method is obviously not the most effective way to teach. Research seems to indicate that the digital generation is moving towards a visual right brain society. Meanwhile, our generations, our teachers, continue to struggle with understanding this because we were paper trained growing up. Keep in mind that it's highly unusual today to find a worker that is loyal to a company or a company that is loyal to a worker. In fact, if you want loyalty, you should probably buy a dog because you aren't going to get it from an employer or an employee. How many of you heard the estimate that students can expect to have 4 to 7 careers in their lifetimes? Yes? That estimate was 15 years ago. In The World is Flat, Thomas Friedman cites statistics from the American Bureau of Labor Statistics which indicate that it's not 4 to 7, but 10 to 17 careers by the time they're 35 years old. And beyond this, Friedman says that because of the rapidly changing economy, the top 10 jobs that will be in demand 10 years from now haven't even been invented yet. And the problem is that we're not necessarily preparing our children for a world that is increasingly flat and for jobs that don't technically even exist yet. And if we think about it, we're going to have to provide them a fundamentally different set of skills than the skills they typically leave school with today in order to survive, let alone thrive in that world. There is such a focus, and it's better here in New Zealand than other places, but there is still such a focus on standardized testing, on, you know what I'm talking about. This is the just-in-case model of teaching. This does not tell me anything except what a student is able to memorize. Just in case it's going to be on the exam, just in case you needed to pass the course, this is the just-in-time model. But the mindsets of digital learners are not organized around just in case. They're organized around just in time. They want to acquire that new skill just in time when they need it, just in time to play the piano, just in time to fix a mountain bike, just in time to do the next thing they don't know how to do. We don't need 4-year degrees anymore. We need 40 years of constant learning, unlearning, and relearning. We are in a completely different world than just-in-case learning. Now, just-in-time learning is about having the skills and knowledge of habits of mind to be able to adapt just in time to the next window of opportunity or area of interest that briefly opens to them. So these are what we've identified as the 21st century fluencies. Solution fluency, the ability to solve problems in real time. Information fluency, the ability to identify information, to determine its authenticity, to triangulate it, to assess it, to apply it to a situation. Creativity fluency, which is critical, the ability to create anything. Media fluency, the ability to not be a victim of media, but be able to decode the message that's being sent to you, being able to determine what the real message is and how well it's being communicated, and then being able to determine the most accurate media for getting your own information out. And lastly, collaboration fluency, the ability to work with others in the same room or across the planet in work groups. And all of these have to be wrapped in a context of the digital citizen, which brings in the guiding principles of leadership, ethics, accountability, and fiscal responsibility. And these 21st century fluencies need to get a promotion. They can't be optional. They need to be every bit as important, if not more important, than history, mathematics, and English literature. It's important that we find a minute of stillness in the chaos of every day so that we can ensure that we're preparing our students for their future and not our past.